you for this wonderful afternoon that you have blessed us with. We thank you, Lord, for giving us all life and giving it to us more abundantly. Dear Lord, we commit this program into your able hands. We pray, oh God, in the name of Jesus, that people will learn from this program, that they will be edified in the name of Jesus, and that it will go smooth and successfully in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Dr.
Amen.
Aya.
Thank you, Dr. Ayo, for that. That was great. So thank you, wonderful. I wanted to say boys and girls, but it's men and women. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. This is great. I'm so happy to be on this platform with you guys. So we will start off. I think I shared with you the why we're doing this, right? With everything that is going on, we just want to learn how to provide the needed support. You're all grown. We thank God for your lives. You're all accomplished in your own rights, and we've been blessed to have children like you without issues. But there is a larger question, right? There's a lot of Nigerian kids that are struggling with, you see, here I am using the word Nigerian kids, but we just never got out of the fact that you guys were born here, but we've raised you as Nigerians, and then the expectation. So I want us to start off with each of you introducing yourselves, and just between 30 seconds to 1 minute, just tell us about who you are and why this is important to you. So we'll start with the eldest, Camille. See, there we go again with the Nigerian culture, bringing in the eldest.
Well, I mean, my name is Kamal. There's not very much choice in whether or not I decided to participate for this one. So already, like, it was more mandatory. If I didn't, I'd be hounded. So that's why it's important to me for peace of mind. Next person.
Okay.
My name is Aya Atto. I'm a pediatrician, and I grew up in a Nigerian household. Both of my parents are Nigerian, and it's important for me to be able to use this platform to help educate other Nigerian parents on, just the struggles that we face growing up, being Nigerian children in America. So I'm happy that we're having this this platform.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I am Omar Egbe. I work in IT. I am a technology lead. I grew up most of my life here with one of the strongest Nigerian human beings that ever walked this earth.
Indeed.
I mean, and I'm just hoping today I can share some insight into, some of the reasons why we end up, being the way we are, if it's due to this our upbringing with our parents and just some of the interactions that we had in school and just society, that impact how we view things the way we do today.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go second. My name is Isake Uzamare, and I actually live in Orlando right now. I'm a women's basketball coach, which is out of the norm of, what Nigerian children usually are. Can't wait to talk about that. But I'm excited for this platform as well. I think it's going to be a great conversation, and can't wait.
Thank you, sweetheart.
I can go next. My name is Akiemi Bajulaye, originally from New Rochelle, New York. I live in Philadelphia now. I work in business incubation and real estate. And I'm excited for this because, well, first of all, because a lot of us here are family. And I was telling my brother yesterday, I feel like a little bit of a family reunion. So I'm very excited to see you guys. And I'm excited that we're having this conversation that in a lot of ways brings the generation before us and our generation together in conversation. And I feel like there are a lot of conversations that aren't had between the generations. And I'm excited to hear the different perspectives and share my own.
Thank you, sweetheart. Next, who is next?
Yeah, I'll go next. My name is Fareed. I live in Berkeley, California. I am a program coordinator for the State Bar of California. interested in seeing what everybody has to say on this platform. It's a pretty interesting topic. It's good to see you guys. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. My name is Osa Haney. Right now I'm in nursing school, and I guess this would be a good place, to talk about the different but really similar perspective that Nigerian, American, I guess children experience based on like how we were raised by our parents who are different in their own right, but pretty much fundamentally the same. So, yeah.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I think I'll go next. Elizabeth Aoyemi is my name. I work as a case manager with NGCRI. I correction case manager. I'm interested in the program as no knowledge is lost. Being a mother that has a young adult at home, so I need my place.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you. Zizi, okay.
Hi, my name is Zaina. I'm happy to be here. See that?
That's it? Okay.
How's it going? The last but not certainly the least, the youngest of the group I want to say today. Temitope Bajulai, my cousin known me as T-Tops. And I think it's a pretty good program in terms of seeing how all our experiences, varied, how they differ, but how they're in the same. Being the youngest of the group today, I would say that my experience was probably more modified because as time went on, as the culture changed, as we became a little more Americanized in how we were raised, I definitely got the tail end of that. So I want to share my perspective on that.
Thank you. You bring up a very good point. So that's a good segue into this question. You were all born, most of you were born here, well, 99% of you were born here, but you were raised as Nigerians. Even the ones that were not, the one that was not born here came here at a very relatively young age. And you were raised as Nigerians in the Nigerian community, and the expectations were you are Nigerians. So let's talk a little bit about how you balance both cultures, because you're Nigerians at home, but out there, maybe in school, at work, you had to take on another culture. So what is that like for you? I'm leaving that open to you guys. Who wants to go amongst the powerful 8?
Let me start this one off. For us, I mean, there is nothing about any of us that we can hide, in terms of like being Nigerian, because first of all, we all have strong Nigerian names. So right off the bat, as soon as we're seen, it's like, okay, I've never seen this many vowels in a name before. Like, it's like, all right, like, who are you? But, for us, it's just being home, the ability to be able to be home and, have that persona at home and then have that persona outside. It's something that, over time we had to master, because you can't bring, your very Nigerian way of thinking to school because you're going to be made fun of. And then you definitely can't bring that American way of looking at things from school home because you probably slap you. So it's like, you just had that, you had to realize where is that median, like how can I balance it out? But it was an act that we had to develop over time.
And just piggybacking off of what Amartbe said, I think in terms of, it's kind of like a job, like where we call code switching, right? So it's like you have these 2 different personalities that really are both you, but you just know which personality to turn on at that specific time, So it's like when you're at school, you have this side of Isaka, and this is who I am when I'm at school, when I'm outside. And then the moment I walk in my Nigerian home, now I have the next switch of, now this is home Isaka. So I think code switching is something that we kind of all formulated, like that's what we do, and even up till now, maybe we're a little more comfortable, in the setting of being in front of our parents. But I think even up to now, we have those 2 sides of us that is just natural to us now.
Yeah. Does anybody else have? Go ahead.
Yeah, to pick back on that, I would say that, I don't know if the word identity crisis is the correct term, but sometimes we go to school and we were two Nigerians to be in school, and we come home like we're two Americans to be at home. So we're always trying to struggle to be like, all right, we want to be Nigerian Americans, we want to be African Americans, but our worlds are so split at the same time, and we always have to figure out when was it the right time to be Nigerian, when was the right time to be American. And the first years of our lives, it's like it was such a struggle because we didn't know the difference. All we knew is what we were told. And as we got older, we started to learn that, all right, this is the right amount, this is the right amount. And I think that the culture we're getting to now is like we're finally seeing that we can be both at all times. We can be both, and we can kind of progress as our Nigerian selves and American selves in both environments.
But that, go ahead, Akim.
I think that makes a good point, because as when we were growing up, a lot of it was really just figuring it out. And so I remember, when I started elementary school, in the first day of school, they read your name on the page, and only name that they can't really pronounce, or that's a longer name, and they just stop. And the first time it happens, you don't really know what's going on, and then that's how I started being called Aki. They're looking at my name, they're like, "Oh, can I call you Aki?" Or it was Aki, but then I liked Aki, so I ended up going with Aki. But like, yeah, I guess my name is Aki now. Aki now. And so it was a lot of constantly just trying to figure it out. And when we look back on it now, and point like East and Omo Meadows, you realize it was almost like a mastery. Like you were, it was this way of life that you perfected. But in the earlier years, it was really it was a process of constantly figuring it out. And I know I always say like my father ran a household as if we were in Nigeria. So, so it was, but I never fully felt like, I was accepted outside. But then, when I was inside the home, I never felt like, I was, it just didn't feel very completely authentic to me. So it was constantly figuring things out to the point where you realize you're just navigating between different worlds, and you're drawn from these different cultures.
But that must have been really difficult for you guys, because you're young kids, you're young, and you can't express yourself to say, this is what I'm dealing with. So you didn't find the support at home, right? Because when you get home, you're Nigerian. We didn't know that this was what you guys were dealing with as parents, So talk a little bit about those struggles, mastering both, because from a very young age you had it's okay, I think it's okay where you guys talked about having split personality, well, not split personalities, having two different personalities. You were this person at home and you were this person outside, and you had to kind of switch at all times. That couldn't have been an easy thing for you to do. So can you guys talk a little bit about that, the kind of pressure that it had on you, and how we were so disconnected from, how parents were so disconnected from those struggles that you were having?
And the thing is, for us, that's why it was so important that each of us had all of these, people on this call right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, yeah.
If I didn't have my cousins, I don't know what would have happened to me. Like, I'm not just saying this because they're here, but they're the ones that really helped me bridge that gap between Nigerian and being here. I've always felt like I could be myself. These are the few people that I always felt that I could be myself around. My true self, I'm not even sure I know, but I know that whenever I'm around them, that's what comes out, because I wasn't wearing a mask. Like, I didn't have to be this external, American, or like this very Nigerian person that grew up in being like, I could just be myself. So it's like being around your cousins, like, sometimes sharing certain stories where you feel like you're the only one that's going through this, and then you tell it to somebody else, and they're able to say, oh yeah, I've been through this, or they said the same thing to me. It kind of eases your mind a little bit that, all right, somebody else has gone through it, and then they kind of have their solution of how they approached it. So I feel like having them as a support group was the utmost important thing that happened to me in life.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Aya. I was going to say, I definitely agree with Amar that I think as a child, it can be very difficult to balance both being an American and also being Nigerian. And I feel like us having that support system, like me growing up in the household with Isaac and Amarigbe, like, all of the experiences that we had, we could all relate with one another and talk to each other. but I can't imagine being the only child going through that.
Yeah.
And I think being a Nigerian American, it kind of falls into its own category, right? Because thinking about it, when you're in school, because of the very strong names, like Amaragbe said, initially they know, okay, you're not American. Then when you go to Nigeria, look at this Oyinbo girl, like, so it's just like you don't really quite fit in either place, but we kind of created this own, I guess, this own area for ourselves, but being an adult now, it's so much easier to maneuver because, quote unquote, now it's like, it's the cool thing now to be African, where we grew up in a time where, oh, you're African, they were gonna make jokes on you from the minute that you stepped in school to the minute that recess buzzer like happened, like, so it's very cool that we were able to kind of create this Nigerian American thing for each other. So
yeah. Just to piggyback on that, it was very important for me to have everybody that's here on the call now. Like growing up, I wasn't as close as I am to Zainab and Kamel before, because I always felt like I was being compared to them. Or why can't you be like your sister? Why can't you be like your brother? And when I had like Omo and I had a Kimmy and I had T-Tops and I just had Papa and I didn't say, even though we used to butt heads, I was just me, and they just accepted that I was who I was. And I'd go to school and I'd struggle in school, and then I was in boarding school and I struggled there too. And I went through a lot of things mentally, and it was tough because I didn't have that community that I had built. I'd isolated, and people there, they were just speaking Hausa. They were like, why can't you be more Nigerian? You're American now, you act like this. And so I went through a lot mentally before I finally got to a place where I was really comfortable with myself. But it took a long time. It took a lot of heartache. It took a lot of near mental breakdowns, and I struggled and I fought, and I went through things physically. But I started to actually build up that confidence in myself that I could just be me, and then the rest came later. But it was a struggle. I'm not gonna lie, it was a tough transition in school and in life. So it was the constant juggling. But this community that I was lucky enough to have was helped me stay grounded.
So I guess I didn't introduce myself. I was a little late.
Yeah, please go ahead.
My name is Uzoma. I was born in Nigeria, but then I moved to LA, specifically Palos Verdes, and now I live in San Francisco. It's nice to hear that everybody had a community, right? Because I think I will say that I was alone. And maybe the word I would use instead of a split personality is like a maybe dual or triple consciousness, This place that I grew up in, Palos Verdes, is like, I don't know, 80% white, and then 2% like African American, and the rest is, Asian American. So when I got there, I had to and I'm the eldest too. So I had to I didn't know that I was figuring things out in real time, because not only did I not fit in with the African American crew, definitely didn't fit in with the white crew. And so as a result of being kind of presented with how different I was, my little 8-year-old brain chose to survive via like that mask or sports. Like sports was a big thing for me, right? Where all these things didn't matter. And it was only till recently, maybe like a month ago, that my dad called me and he was like, Uzoma, things were really hard on you. We didn't think about it. We didn't address any of the things that you might have been going through. Do you want to talk about it now? I'm like, man, it's like 26 years late. But I appreciate you, and it was actually really, nice to hear that, because it was like, no, I'm not crazy, right? When I go to school and I work on losing my accent, right? Just so I don't have to deal with any of this stuff. Or if I get, pounded yam and up on, I'm sitting in the corner because I'm like, y'all, it smells good to me, but I don't know how you will feel about this, And now it's really different. Now I'm like, oh, this is more like a superpower, right? This is like, I can fit in anywhere. Like nothing scares me, and I will show you, you know what I mean? So I think it took a while to get there. And I think my siblings kind of benefited from my kind of, trying and failing in that whole process.
And just piggybacking off of what you said, I think you made a great point, and everybody kind of touched on it. But I think one of, I guess, the tools or advice I would give is the open line of communication, because I think growing up in a Nigerian home, you're not going to get the, like, how are you feeling today? Like, how was everything? You know what I'm saying? And so it's the things that we deal with or the reasoning. So, like, I'll just use my name for an example. So growing up, obviously, it's like you go to school, you have this name. I remember going into like school and telling the teacher, like I would approach the teacher and say, hey, like, this is my name, I'm already here. Cause I didn't want them to, like, you know, say it out loud and pronounce it wrong. And everybody's like, ah, like, you know, you just don't deal with that. But I think if we have an open line of communication where it's like, now I am proud of my name. I know that my name has meaning. Like, you know, growing up, you don't, obviously, you know, your name has meaning, but you don't really know the reason why you were named that. You don't really know all of that. So I think that if our parents open up a more like, just an area where you can communicate better with them and say, this is how I'm feeling, or school went like this, or, because if, I just feel like we didn't have that, you weren't able to just go and ask questions, if that makes sense. You know, it was just assumed you're a child, go sit at the children's table, and that's it, you know?
Because I said
I agree with all of that. But on top of that, there's also the generational divide where the time that we were born is a time of great changes across the world, on top of what happened with being pretty much split two different nations at the same time. The world as we grew up is a very different place from the world today. Just even how children grow up. The concept of recess is no longer something that's in schools. Everybody's inside, technology boomed. So on top of that big change, we had to also deal with, you know, the Nigerian aspect of that too. So that's also a big factor that nobody really thinks about as well.
And touching on what Fareed said, I know we kind of talked about it before everybody went on, but just like the mental struggle. And I think that a lot of times with the older generation, it's like it's kind of swept under the rug, like mental illness is kind of swept under the rug, or it's not taken as something serious, or the solution. OJ made a joke and was just like, go on, pray. Like, when it's just like, yeah, I understand that. But then there are other things that you need. The same way, you know, we work out our bodies to be healthy, we have to work out our minds. You like, therapy is something that I think is necessary. But I think in the Nigerian community, it's like, therapy? You don't need a therapist. You know what I mean? So it's like that mental health issue. I think that's something that we really do need to start talking about and accepting, because it's very real.
Yeah, and it's okay. You also touched on it, right? Because I mean, as parents, I didn't know you guys were, I mean, I didn't know kids were struggling with maybe their name at school. And so we never created a platform for you to come and talk about your feelings. And Uzoma also talked about it, that 26 years later, his father is like, oh, now we realize you were going through something. So we never created that avenue or that platform to say, come. So how was school today? How was school today for us meant, how was your grade? And God forbid you didn't do well in school. So it wasn't about your feelings or the challenges you had. When we asked how was school today, it was really how was your academics, right? So there wasn't an avenue for you guys to talk about, oh, someone mocked me about my name, and then the opportunity to now say, your name is beautiful, Isoke means this, Isoke means that. Can you guys talk a little bit about how difficult that was, and what is it that we did that made it so difficult, that made us unapproachable? Let me use it that way.
So,
made parents so unapproachable.
So I guess the therapy point is kind of where I'm going to jump off, because I didn't know how much shame I felt for being different, right? And the way in which I masked that shame was just kind of surviving day to day. And my dad, you know, I'm sure like many of you guys, is just like, there's no what are feelings, right? That's not something that is part of the kind of vocabulary. And it wasn't until I started therapy that I realized that this dude is actually really emotional, right? And he actually feels everything in a deep way. And when it comes out on a volume 10. So, and what I picked up as a young kid dealing with all these things that I couldn't talk about was I became really good at counterpunching. And if I'm a counterpuncher, I'm not concerned about what, what you're saying may be right or wrong, but I can't be out there getting beat up and then in here getting beat up. I got my little 8-year-old self has got some pride too. And it took a while to understand that I carried that with me for up until maybe a year ago, right? So I think the point of that is I also don't blame my dad because there are no instructions. Our story is was specific in that I'm the eldest of 5. We moved out here. It was supposed to be like a temporary thing. And then it ended up being permanent because my mom gave birth to my youngest brother out here. And they got it in their own sphere or strata, living in Palos Verdes where nothing makes sense, right? Where you were both doctors and you come here and you can't do anything. By the way, you have to make things work on the fly. And the only person that they could kind of talk to about it was me, right? And so I was getting it from there and I was trying to support, there was a lot going on. So that's kind of why it was hard, because on top of that, you still have to answer the question, how are your grades? And I never did, just because I was like, we don't have to have this conversation. But it was difficult.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys?
Just to piggyback on that, I think he said a lot of important things, and I'll talk about mental health as well.
Can you speak up a little bit, Farid?
Okay, can you hear me
Speak
now?
up.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me? Okay.
Yes.
So I said he spoke about a lot of important things. So I'll piggyback on some of the ideas. But when I was younger, I talked to my dad about something, and he'd just say, "Life is tough. Deal with it." And for me, and years later on, I told him, I said, whoever told you to say that, that was a piss poor idea. Like I didn't say that terms, but I was like that was not a good way to explain to me that life is difficult and you're going to need to develop skills in order to solve problems, because all that did was make me shut down and just not talk to you about certain things. So I think there are points in time when we're kids, we forget that our parents are humans. And so sometimes that we might be vulnerable, but if you're having an off day, it might be just something that makes me shut down. I'm like, okay, you didn't handle my problem well, so I may not come to you again. And so, and I think anybody that knows me on this knows how direct and brash I was when I was younger. Like in terms of diplomacy, I had none. I just said whatever I wanted to say, and I just did it. And it wasn't until after I became a mediator that I realized there was a lot of triggers, a lot of mental health problems that we'd have to solve and navigate through when dealing with other people. And so I can't say, oh, okay, well, they didn't know this, therefore it's a problem. So I didn't learn that until a couple of years ago myself. And just learning how to navigate. But just having these discussions is a really good moving point, is a good point moving forward. Being able to say, you know what, maybe we didn't do things the best way, but for the future, we want to do better. So this is a good starting point with regards to that. And I also became a counterpuncher. Like I had a lot of self-confidence issues. Um, I was made fun of in school. I was bullied. I went through a lot of things, and so I learned to have a sharp mouth. That's what kept people away from me, like just having a sharp mouth. And it came out in a lot of bad times with my grades and talking to teachers too. But it was just all a defense mechanism because I didn't know how to handle what I was going through. And so it just kind of followed me up until like college. But and realizing that at any point in time, it's okay to feel how you feel. It's okay to learn how to navigate through that. It's okay to be sad at any point in time. These are all natural feelings. And just going through that and learning how to deal with that. It took me some time, but I started to get the hang of it. And It's been a lot better since, but it was tough initially navigating, but I'm good now.
But you see, the way your parents responded, I mean, let me speak for myself. It was to beat you, right? You come back, your teacher said you had a sharp mouth. There was no underlying issue. Why did you have a sharp mouth? Why? You get whooped for, talking back to your teacher without realizing that you were manifesting some struggles that you had, right? So that's really where the disconnect with the Nigerian parents are, because you're manifesting different things, and instead of us to find the root cause, we add on top of it. Let me speak for myself. I know, like, I will whoop you from today till tomorrow.
And
It's like, your teacher said you said something.
Auntie, don't forget the twisting of the ear. Don't forget that, Auntie.
I jump in real quick because Fareed's my brother and that's my mom right there. And we've had similar experiences, but our experiences are totally different at the same time. My father is a Hausa Muslim man. So let's talk a little bit about subcultures in Nigeria. And my mom is Benin and Yoruba, but she doesn't like to add her Calabar side in it. So we have a very aggressive Nigerian woman and then a different type of Nigerian man. And then if my brother Fareed was aggressive or like counterpart, I was always taught to be a little bit more submissive, do what I was told, never question anything. And then also growing up in a household as well, when I lived in Nigeria, Hausa women are submissive. Hausa women do a lot of the chores. Hausa women don't have the opportunity to live like a male does. And it kind of like, I had a really bad struggle because I'm used to growing up as a Bini woman, like, speak out when I feel like I'm wronged or just to defend yourself a little bit. So it's definitely been a struggle finding myself being from different cultures in Nigeria, then being here in America, then having a Christian mother, a Muslim father. So it's been like a real difficulty finding myself and like being secure in myself as who I am.
Yeah. Wow. That's a different dynamic. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to jump in a little bit. First of all, I just wanted to say that, how you doing, Auntie? I just want to say thank you for even having this kind of dialogue, because I think the first things first, a big issue I think we as first generation Nigerian Americans have with our parents is like we communicate and comprehend differently. And I think kind of like how you said, we're in a situation where you get in trouble, the teacher comes home and said you're misbehaving. To you guys, it's like there's a certain level of authority. Once you cross authority, there's no questions asked. So I think the first things first is like just having the opportunity to be able to understand how we comprehend, how you guys comprehend, so we can communicate better. But Zainab, talked about a lot right now that I think is really good, because there's so many stratospheres to all of our experience, so many different. And I think understanding where you stand, what the stratosphere of your parents, who they are, how they function. I think figuring that out and also figuring yourself out, I think helps to come to that understanding, but it takes time. It takes time, especially when, to a certain extent, being able to maneuver here, there's certain tools you have to be equipped with. And having parents who come from Nigeria, from a completely different time, a completely different way of thinking, the tools they're equipped with to succeed don't always transfer over. So again, I just want to thank you. I think having this dialogue allows us to be able to figure that out.
Thank you.
I think.
Go ahead, Omo.
I is my senior. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one thing too that's very important to understand, specifically from Nigerian parents, is that as an adult, I'm able to comprehend this now. They were thinking, oh, you're a child, you're fed, you have clothes, you go to a good school. What kind of issues?
What's your problem?
Exactly. Yeah. But from our standpoint, it's like, yes, we do have all of these things, but we also have struggles that we're dealing with too. And I think they were just passing on what was passed on to them and what they knew, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like me and my adult self now, I don't blame them because I know that they were doing the best that they could, right? They used the tools that were passed down to them and they applied it to us. But unfortunately, like Owen said, because we're growing up in a completely different area, we were growing up in America, it didn't always translate over. They were using those Nigerian tools, those Nigerian values, as if we were growing up in Nigeria. And yes, we were growing up in a Nigerian household, but we were still growing up in America. We were going to an American school. We were facing American children and different things like that. So I think they didn't really understand, like, yes, I was fed. Yes, I went to a good school. I have clothes, I have shoes, and I have a bed, a roof to sleep over, but I still also have these issues that I'm dealing with. So I think it's important to know, like, your children still have struggles that they're going through every single day going to school, having those conversations, like, what happened at school? And not just asking about grades, but like, you see your child is coming or they're misbehaving for a particular reason. Like, why do you think that you were acting out? Like, let's sit down, let's have this conversation, let's talk about the root of it. Don't just address the action, but you have to address the root also, right? So I think that's very important to talk about.
No, and actually,
Go
this
ahead,
is actually directly related to what I was saying. Being older now and actually having conversations with my mother as human being to human being and not, commit soldier, you realize that some of the things that, went on with our parents is they were dealing with some struggles themselves. Like, and the thing is, there was a certain amount of frustration that within them that instead of expressing it, I guess, in their way, shouting at us. And, just now having conversations with my mother, understanding things that led up to just my childhood being the way it is, it helped me understand her frustration so much more that I just look at her like, I'm not mad at you. Like, I'm really, not that I could be anyway, but I'm like, I'm not mad at you because understand, Mom. I know the source of this,
And
talk a little bit more. Okay, go ahead. Who wants to speak? Who's speaking?
I just want to piggyback off of what Amarikbe said. And I think it's a great point because I literally, I say it all the time, I am a product of my environment. And 98% of, I think, who I am is directly correlated with how I grew up. And I like to say I'm like the American version of my mom. And so I'm outspoken, and I have a big personality, but I do think that it's made us, like, growing up Nigerian, and because obviously first of all, Nigerians are very, like, brash, like they're gonna say what's on their mind. It doesn't matter how it comes out. So it made a lot of us have tough skin. So when you see a lot of, like, the Nigerian children, like us, we're like, there's nothing that you can say to me when I go outside that's gonna hurt my feelings or that's gonna make me want to cry, because I'm just like, I'm Nigerian. Like, sweetie, you're not hurting my feelings because I'm tough. And so I think a lot of who I am and why I'm the way I am, and the same thing academic wise, and we may not have always been the best student, but when we go out, you see that Nigerians really excel in comparison to, and a lot of that is because of the pressure, whether or not it be good pressure or bad pressure. I mean, a lot of that is because of the pressure that we face. And I think Fareed made a good point in the beginning when he talked about the comparison thing, because I think our parents do that a lot to compare, especially when you have siblings, or especially when you're growing up with cousins, just family members. And so I'll just use me as an example. Like, my sister is a whole doctor. So from the time she was young, she's just always been very, very smart in school. She, like, everything, and she's very sweet. She has, like, a calm personality, And so me on the other end, I was always just, I was just always the crazy child. Like, I didn't do as good as her in school. I always talked too much. My report cards would always say overly talkative, while it was just a pleasure to have in class. And so that comparison where it's just like, see your sister, why can't you behave like, and I'm just like, but it made me tough, and it brought out my personality even more. So I think it's funny because a lot of the things that were trauma for us when we were younger, it literally created who we are now, if that makes sense.
Can I say
something on that?
Can I say something?
Please, don't compare your children.
Comparison, because
Z, you wanted to say something?
Yes, one more thing about comparison. Since Ayo and Amoriba got married or getting married, the prayer has been, please use Ayo and Amoriba as a all their children, all our siblings to get married. We're tired, okay? We don't want to get at.
Go ahead, Camille. I know you were trying to talk before.
I want to jump on that. I feel like there's also kind of a suppression of things that aren't the norm for Nigerians. like if you notice, nobody has kind of strayed towards the artistic side. Anything that's not engineer, doctor, lawyer is killed off. So a lot of people don't have interest in arts, music. I mean, T-Tops is probably the only person that kind of goes out there because of his video. And even you can kind of even say that's a byproduct of technology. So a lot of Nigerians kind of, I mean, they push, towards the hard sciences. And as a result, a lot of people kind of are ashamed to kind of do anything that's creative and inventive. So I feel that's kind of like pushes a lot of people towards being closed off and not wanting to express themselves because, anytime that if I said I want to be a musician, there's no support for that. If I want to be an artist, there's no support for that. Why would you?
There's prayer for that.
There'll be a lot of sarcasm and prayer, but not support.
Camille, I love that you said. I love that you brought that up because I think that's something that's really important that I think that should be discussed within our culture as well. So when you think of the concept of mind, body, and soul, I think that's like the trinity that makes up a being, so to speak. So looking at us being in American society where the major focus is more so on the mind and the body. And even with that focus on the mind, there's like an array, like you're allowed to be able to kind of dig into things on a more psychological or sociological level. Whereas us coming from like a Nigerian household or from the African space, that delving into the psychology of things isn't necessarily the norm. So it's more so like it's just straight to the point. Things are very practical, very point A to point B. So I think for me growing up, that was something, of course, being a Nigerian, that was the focus: engineer, lawyer, doctor, accountant. But as a kid, I think I was always drawn towards the creative side. Isaken said something about, the difference between her older sister and her. And I would have to say the same for me. My older brother, first one, like engineer, like was always on that route. But even as kids, we dealt a lot with the creative side. I'm fortunate enough to have parents who were more liberal than most Nigerian parents, but even then, there was still that, that's cool and all that, you guys can draw and you like music and stuff like that, but doctor, lawyer, engineer, like that's where we're at. And it was an issue for me. That was something I fought my parents on for a long time. And that was one of the things I told myself I wasn't backing down from. And I think going back to what E said about, the difference between siblings, my brother was more first son. He felt he had an obligation to do things a certain way. I, on the other hand, was like, nah, that's cool. Y'all got him. That's great. But like, I want to do things how I want to do things. And that's real. And I think as that's something that we should champion more within our society or within our culture, to be able to push the boundaries. Because that's what's like, the fact that we're having this conversation now is because we've been able to push the boundaries to open these opportunities up. So I kind of just wanted to delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it was really important to bring in that point, Camille, because I'm in architecture right now, and I went to a liberal arts school. I went to Colgate, and so firstborn, everybody's like, doctor, and then you throw football in the mix, and I'm all sorts of trouble, right? And I remember declaring a major was like the hardest thing that I had done up to that point, getting on the phone with my dad and being like, I think I'm gonna do art history. And I don't remember the words that came after that, but they were hot. And but I'm like, hey, I'm in Colgate, like you can't fly up here anyways, it's too expensive. So like, we'll figure it out. But I think learning how to, like for my siblings, there's so many things that were talked about that were really awesome. My sister is the smartest person on earth. And she was doing so when she was
the smartest person on earth.
Fair. I think they might be related. Clearly I don't belong in the same gene pool. And so from a young age, I would realize that one, my role is I'm on the bridge, right? I'm the translator between because my siblings didn't really remember Nigeria like that. So whenever anything was going to happen or they needed to understand my siblings, they would talk to me, and I would go talk to them, and I was like in between, you know. And back to the art conversation, these are gifts that we've been blessed with. And so no matter how hard I tried to not and to conform to, like, you know, chemistry and math and all that kind of stuff, I was always way better at the artistic. So I couldn't hide from it. Even like to this day, I've been like architecture, yeah, but like, I care, but I don't, you know, because it's not fulfilling what I think I was meant to do in that specific way. So like I have guitars, I got a drawing that I'm trying to start. I'm doing 8 million things that I don't have the energy for, just to kind of course correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that my parents saw me struggle with that. And so with that, they allowed my siblings to kind of be a little bit more free in what they sought after. My sister, granted, she was smart, so like they didn't really care because she was getting A's and scholarships and stuff. But my younger brother became a biomedical engineer, and not because he was forced to, because he's actually good at it, you know. So I think I realized that everybody has their role, and my role, which I'm proud of as the oldest, and I feel like I had to meet all these expectations, was to kind of do a lot of the unteasing or untethering between the friction between those two worlds, which I'm down to do. It's actually cool.
Thank you. OJ, we haven't heard from you at all. OJ and T-Tops, because T-Tops, I have a question for you, because you also brought up a point about because you're the youngest of the cousins, and things had kind of relaxed a little bit. So I would like you to speak a little bit about that. But before you do that, OJ, we haven't heard much from you. What do you have to add to this conversation?
I mean, I could definitely agree and relate to a lot of the conversation, but you know, at the same time, like I guess my upbringing is it's kind of a little bit more different than everyone else's here, because almost everyone else here I not lived with, but I grew up at a specific time. Like there was a time where I grew up with East, Aya, and Amarvet. There was a time I was with them, Fareed and Camille. There was literally a time when I was with them, Adema and Owen. So I literally have a very different experience than with everyone. So and what kind of even changes it too is because like I guess like I was literally like with with my mom, right? So everyone who knows me should know my mom, right? And imagine growing up with that type of with that type of strong woman. Right? So like so for me, and also being the oldest, like I never really had anyone to like really express with. I only had a lot of people to hang out with, you know. So it's very different, and like growing up into like what I wanted to do, like all of these things I didn't necessarily know, and I didn't have access to a lot of things. I didn't have access to a lot of things, and even at that transition point, so now I'm moving from like 12 to 13, then now I'm going to Nigeria. So not only did I not know what I'm going through as like a 12-year-old, now I start my teenage years in Nigeria. And now I'm in boarding school at 14 years old, still not knowing a lot about myself and things along. And within that time, I'm now separated from my little brother, who I'm already 6 years older than. So that's another 3-year gap that I'm going with in Nigeria. So then I leave Nigeria to come back to America to do senior year, right? Senior year in Nigeria to start college and university, not knowing anything about what I'm going to do from 12. So now I'm 17, and I'm still dealing with these African culture, American culture, Brooklyn culture. Then now and all of these things. So it's kind of different. So that's why it kind of takes me longer to do a lot of things because I literally have to go through the whole process to know, okay, it's not for me because I didn't really have anyone who went through the process, which would be different from my younger brother because my younger brother will see, I would tell my younger brother, don't do that because that's not it versus me, you know. So, but growing up, so with the whole like switching between American and Nigeria, like I didn't even know it was a struggle, which is a struggle within itself, you know? Not knowing that you're struggling kind of you don't put it into perspective that you're actually struggling. So like it wasn't until like recently, you know, I guess as you get older, so does your parents, you know, but nevertheless the age gap never shrinks. So you're still that same person, but you know, but the more conversations you have, you know, the more you're more understanding of like your upbringing. You know, like the younger you are, like I feel like the less of an understanding that you have as to why you were raised the way you are, right? But the more you're older to it, the more it becomes like water off the bat. You're not necessarily holding it against anything, and you just forget about all of the adverse effects that it kind of put you through because you're over it now, you know. And I feel like for our parents in that transition, like it's already too late. Like there is no way as to we're gonna redeem everything that we've quote unquote lost from parenting love and everything because we get it. That's just how your cup of tea is. So I'm really focused on my generation and what I'm going to do for generations below me because I really feel like that disconnect between us and our parents, like it can only get closer, but it will never reattach. So that reattachment, I feel like, you know, we'll have to do that from our from our down. So that's just kind of
Thank you.
my thing.
That's very deep. You bring that up, and I want to address that in another question. But I wanted because I wanted Titops to talk about, you know, that your experience as the older ones is a little different from Titops. So Titops mentioned that. Titops, can you talk a little bit about, you know, your experience and how it kind of the pressure kind of tapered down a little bit when it got to you?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people talk. I think a lot of people touched upon it early on, but you know, when we're first generations, you know, Nigerian Americans, and the first one of us that came here and started the school process, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be an engineer, and that's all you knew. That's the only path you had to go down. And then, fortunately for me, you guys all came before me. So whenever it came time for me to want to do something, I can say, oh well, so and so did this and it worked out for them, or so and so did that. So by having you guys come before me, you guys opened these doors that were never there. There were never options for you guys, but because of you guys, you created these paths. You showed that yes, there's success, but success can be reached by different forms. And each one of us that goes through and accomplishes something, we open the door for the next person. And you know, Kamal was saying that, you know, what I'm doing is a little different than the traditional Nigerian traditional values, but that was only possible because of what you guys did. And hopefully what I'm doing now can create that door for the next person, because if they want to be an artist, they can say, oh, well, so-and-so does this and they're successful and they're doing a good job, so this is fine to do. I think a big part of how we were raised, it was obviously always with good intent, but what it came off was like, these are the only ways to be successful. Success was defined as A, B, or C. There was no other letters in the alphabet. You had those three choices, and being the youngest one, when I was first growing up, you know, I always make the joke now that you can only be a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. But like I said before, you know, after seeing you guys accomplish different things, after seeing older Nigerians or my older cousins accomplish different things, I said, oh snap, there's 26 letters in the alphabet. There's not 3. And I got to kind of, you know, I got my pick of those options. So I think it's, as we're saying, you know, as time progresses, the doors are opening, and each person that goes to the next door, each person that pushes the boundary a little bit further, it's not just for yourself, but it's for the next generation. And hopefully the ideal is that we bridge that gap so that if you want to be an artist, you can be an artist. If you want to, you know, be a car salesman, you can also sell cars, and it won't just be something you're doing because you want to do it, but something you're able to do because your parents are encouraging you to do it, and they're saying that if this is what's to make you happy, yes, that's gonna be great because yes, success is great and money is great, but what's the point of having all that success and all that money if you're still missing that piece of your soul that you can't fill?
Mm. That's very powerful. And I want you guys to talk a little. You are very fortunate that you grew up in a community. And I think Omo, Ayo, Isoke, Farid talked about having that support system in a community, as a community. But you also dealt with a lot of pressure that other Nigerian kids are not fortunate to have overcome, right? There's depression, there's mental health, there's a lot of challenges that has resulted from that pressure that other Nigerian kids have. So, and I think Farid talked about that. OJ talked about that. Unwe also talked about that, and the struggles that you have. So, if you want to speak to your parents today, if we had a chance to do it all over again, what would you say? What would your expectations be? What would you be, mommy, hear me when I speak, or this is the kind of environment that you can create for me that will help me? Can you guys speak a little bit about that? OJ said it's too late, but I don't believe it's ever too late for anything, because we can start from where we are today, right? And begin to mend every broken piece. But talk about if you had a magical wand to go back into the past, what are some of the things that the parents could change, because it would help those coming up too? Whoever was, go ahead, Akiemi.
I'll go after Camille. I'll go after you too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to speak on that because, today, my mother and I, we have a very open line of communication. She and I talk a lot about, honestly, everything. And it wasn't like that when my parents growing up. And I feel like open line of communication and also explain things, especially as a child, is so important. And I remember, I think about, just what's kind of happening in the world right now with all the deaths and Black Lives Matter. And I remember the story that I told from grade school. I ran track and field, like a lot of people know. And I remember there was one day I was doing I would do workouts sometimes outside. There was one day I was doing 200 repeats right outside of my house. And we grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, in Waikiki. And so, we're one of a few Black families. I remember doing this workout. My father got so angry at me that I was running. I didn't really understand why. And so that's an example of, things like that would happen where there was a reason, and there was a clear reason why, but maybe I wouldn't be explained why that was. And then when you see like what happened a couple weeks ago or months ago now, when Ahmaud Arbery was jogging, and then what happened after that, you realize like, oh, okay, this is the reason why my father was so angry, and it was actually in my best interest, but like we weren't always explained things, and I think it was just the differences in communication. But I think that's something that would change a lot, and I understand that all of our parents did the best they can and really prepared us for the world, because now today I feel like I have tough skin. I feel like there's certain things that don't affect me as much as others. But I think like to going beyond that, there's certain maybe like emotional or psychological aspects that we can meet that maybe we didn't growing up.
Who was going next?
I
think Camille wanted to go next.
Yeah.
So, there's one thing that I want to talk about that kind of everybody's kind of glossed over is Nigerian parents kind of create resentment between siblings. And it's something that like almost everybody glosses over and you don't kind of realize it. There's the oldest ones that are always responsible for whatever the younger ones do. So they resent the younger ones for, having freedoms or being responsible for whatever that they did. This is something that's happened that I personally know. Akiemi, OJ, Aya, and Morabe, and myself have had to deal with. If Farid did something wrong, Aya, myself, Omo would get blamed. If OJ used to get blamed for Uwa not brushing his teeth. Akiemi would get blamed for T-Tops doing something that he was, you're the oldest one, you're supposed to be responsible for that. The younger ones resent the older ones at times because they are privy to some privileges. If, say, I got in an argument with Fareed, right? Mom would instantly take my side and yell at Fareed, even if I caused the trouble, or the vice versa. Like the good, there's also the good child and the misbehaving child who, you know, people don't get listened to. Because I remember when we were younger, Isake and Fareed kind of got unfairly blamed for a lot of things that like Zainab would do sometimes.
Whoa.
I didn't say all the time.
That really said, but in their defense.
Can you finish? Okay.
It's like we were troublemakers.
Even though we all love each other, and like when you're young, there's that kind of resentment that's there for each sibling, because I like some of the things that like some of the I used to envy Fareed's freedom. Like there was a point that, you know, nobody talked to him about school anymore because, you know, he wasn't doing that great. So it's kind of like, you know, and then I had to go and like, if I got like a B plus or something like that, why is it a B, not A? You know, and you know, if you get 95, why isn't it 100? Yeah, that kind of thing. And it's just kind of like that kind of annoyance between siblings. And we're all good right now, but that's kind of, as you're younger, it's kind of causes a lot of fights and arguments between one another.
Thank you. Who wanted to go next? It's okay.
No, first of all, you just said a whole word. I'm just saying, like, no, it's very true. So I have two things to address. To answer your initial question, Auntie Jumoke, I think what some of our parents can do now is to just have empathy. I think that a lot of Africans don't have empathy. Mm-hmm. Like we just, you know, that's just something that we're just not, I don't know. And so I think, because I remember for a while I used to think like, Mommy, were you never young? You act like you never were my age. Like I remember just thinking that, like, were you just born this age? You were just born a mom and that was it. And so it's like, I think just thinking about and putting yourself in your child, just remembering when you were young. Because I feel like with a lot of us, it's not just growing up in an African home, and Z kind of touched on it. Like, it's like I grew up in an African and religious home. So it's like we're mixing Nigerian culture with Christianity, Sunday, night vigil, prayer service, choir practice. So it's like you're mixing religion now with the strong culture that we have. And that in itself was a struggle. And just piggybacking off of what Camille said, I think that that's a really, really good point. And thank God I've never dealt with this. And I think that our parents and the people around us did a really good job with it, but I do want to touch on it. I think colorism in our culture too is something that's really, really important. And like I said, I've never had to deal with it, thank God. But I think with light skin and dark skin in our culture, it's like, oh, you're yellow. I'm musi. Like, you know what I mean? Like, ew. You know, you hear about, no, seriously. So it's like, if we're really getting into the real, you hear it all the time. Oh, she's light skinned. She's so beautiful. Where it's like, then you see the darker skin. And like I said, I have personally never dealt with it because, you know, I look beautiful. So, no, but I think that's something that's extremely real in our culture too, with just that comparison.
No, I would say,
Zainab, you wanted to go? I think Zainab wanted to go after you. Okay. Go ahead, Zainab.
Oh, no,
you yield to him.
Just real quick. It's like I said, empathy is important, and like just the importance of them being able to see us as people also. And it's hard to say, but I would say one of the things that made my mother and I closer was we had a very big argument back in 2012 that, you know, it led to us not speaking for the longest. We've never spoken to in our life, and it seemed like a situation where it was like, who was going to break first. And, you know, it's just that argument. I think that argument in itself led her to like kind of look at me like, okay, well, he's a person. Like he has his. Right now, I don't think there's a single thing that I can't tell my mother. And just her seeing me as a person, you know, if she has an idea or she needs help with something, she has no problem picking up the phone to say, Omar, but can you look at this? Or like, so like, it's no longer my mother and me. It's kind of like, you know, she's let me ascend to a level closer to her where she knows that I'm not just that kid that she gave birth to 32 years ago. I'm, you know, her son that is a man that's lived life and understands what's going on.
Thank you for that.
What I wanted to add was two things. Was one, I guess the expectations of girls in Nigerian culture that I feel like Nigerians need to change that as well. As you guys know, I grew up with, except for I and Isaka, majority of my cousins are boys. I only have brothers in here. So my expectations in the house was always 100% different than my brothers. And I, unfortunately, did not have a lot of freedom. And then my second thing was the shame. Nigerians, whenever their child does something, majority of the time they'll go call their auntie, their uncles, and like tell them, and they shame them. And that's something that is very painful to us growing up. Or even the expectation of, oh, because you're not doing what I want you to do, you are a disgrace to this family. So that's something that I honestly feel like Nigerian parents need to work on and just accept us for who we are.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I just want to
go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to add to that. I really love what everybody has said so far. I think the ones that spoke to me the most was what Omar said, and I think was what Akiemi said. But I think, you know, a big thing is like what I'm seeing kind of across the board is like it's old world values going against new world values, and I think that's where the colorism, you know, the shaming, you know, it's a very like our culture is very hierarchical in the sense that like it's almost like there always has to be somebody at the top and then there has to be people under, and I think that's why it tends to be a thing where there's a lot of comparison. If this person's at the top, everybody's trying to ascend to the top. Why aren't you at the top? You know, or it's like a thing where if you see light skins at the top, well, if that's the top, you know, again, so just that kind of mentality. So I think the biggest thing for me, I would say, would be like adding empathy with communication and comprehension, because I think if you're able to really comprehend and understand where a person is coming from, you have a way higher possibility to be empathetic to them. So using kind of an example of, let's say our parents, when it comes to like, let's say they're in business and they have a friend in business and something happens bad to their business, they can be empathetic to that way of thinking because it aligns with what they want. So I think the more our parents, and more so, I would say more so to us, the more we kind of like all these things that we say we wish we could have had for our parents, the more we can do for our kids, the better it's going to be for the culture as a whole.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say is all this reminded me of a conversation I had with my mother, and the big picture word that comes to mind is context, like attention to context, because coming from one place to another, you kind of assume it's a one-to-one translation. And I told my mother, I was like, think about how you guys were all flying in Nigeria, right? You've kind of flew, let's say it was a grid, right? Orthogonal lines, and you guys were, you know, there's been generational trajectory. We're used to this grid, we're flying in. And then you take away that grid, same plane, and then you put it on a spider web, right? Now, everything that you were used to doing, or the kind of status quo or your MO for everything, tweaks a little bit because you have to adjust for the contextual change. And I think a lot of the friction was when things didn't align to the grid that they used to fly with or they were raised with. Then you insert shame, then you insert the comparisons, then you insert the colorism, then you know, it was just a gateway to things. So I think attention to context, or how contextual shifts force you to go a little bit slower, which opens the door for empathy and listening and communication and all those kinds of things.
Thank you. That's so very powerful. So we are up on the hour, and I know we are getting ready to kind of close this out. would you guys, I would like each of you to go around and give us your parting words. I know a lot of people are joining in now because we usually have this session at 11 o'clock, but I switched it up today to 10 o'clock. So I'm going to make this available by YouTube. The recording is going to be available by YouTube, and I'll send the link to everyone who missed it. So can you guys just go around with your parting words of how this is, and do we need a follow-up session? Because this was great. I learned a lot, and it's not too late. I'm glad we did this, and I'm fortunate that our relationships are getting better. Almost said we're seeing you as adults, and so that's a good thing. And so we take it from here. We still want to support you to be successful, as you're also supporting us, because now the roles are reversal, right? You're supporting us in our own work, in our own shortcomings, as we are also helping you. So this is a good thing for us. I don't know that we really have apologies, but we did the best that we could with what we had, right? It's what we knew. And I thank God that you guys found yourself, but also you all grew up in strong Christian homes because you were taught to pray. And I think that is also a very important point. True or false?
Yes, true.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you guys to kind of, if you guys want to just, what are your parting comments? What is the next step for us in your adulthood now? It's never too late. So we missed it, or we didn't miss it. We messed up a little bit in your growing up, but you are now adults, right? And we have an opportunity to be better. So you guys touch on that as we close. Who wants to go first?
Sorry, we definitely should do a part 2 because there's some things that we didn't even address yet. That's what
I'll say that I was ready.
No, I mean,
so
like dating.
Go ahead.
There's definitely more.
No, I definitely, first off, Auntie, I want to commend you on actually having this forum because I think it was very educational, and it was actually therapeutic also to be able to, to talk about this and to have our parents some of our parents on the line as well. And I do think that we need a follow-up because there's still a lot of stuff that, we need to talk about, especially for the younger generation too, and for parents who want to know how should I be parenting this younger generation and navigating them in America, right? Secondly, I just want to
that's part 2. Let me write that topic down, Ayo. Okay, say it again.
I don't even remember exactly how.
Oh, okay, I'll get it from the recording. So that's definitely the part 2.
Okay. And also, I want to say that I believe that once we have life, it's never too late to mend anything, right? And I think that a lot of us, now that we're adults, the dynamic of that child-parent relationship has changed. Me personally, I can say that I feel like myself and my mom, we're actually friends now. Like I can talk to her about things that I wouldn't even imagine me being able to talk to her as a kid. And I think that my parting words would just be just to be empathetic to your children and try to understand where they're coming from. Yes, obviously your childhood experiences are not going to be the same, but if your child comes to you, even no matter how small you think their complaint is, just address it, because these are things that they're going to remember and that they're going to carry on. And sometimes that moment may be so small to the parent, but it could be a very defining moment for the child. And we don't want that to, negatively impact how they grow or how they interpret certain things. So just, parents, I would just, say, just really listen to your children and listen to them, not only by what they're saying, by how they behave as well. If you know your child normally doesn't behave in a particular way and they're acting out, that's a sign. That's something that we need to address. It's not just addressing the fact that they're misbehaving and disciplining them, but trying to understand the root as to why that behavior is happening in the first place. So those are my parting words.
Thank you, sweetheart. Okay. Who's next?
To kind of add to that again, and kind of like what Ayo said, I just wanted to thank you for doing this, because the biggest thing in this whole thing is just just having parents who even care to want to hear this other side. So I think that's where it first starts. Communication is a two-way street, and you need both parties to be able to be listening. So I think my parting words would be to be more open to hearing your children out and kind of like Ayo said, really hearing out their experiences. I think also too that the next one that's done should have more parents and more up and coming parents as well, because it's like, one, I think we can talk amongst ourselves. These are conversations we have within ourselves as a whole, but I think the more we have it with our parents, the more they can try to understand. And then for the up and coming parents, it'll help with their process in kind of doing things better. Because how I see it is that even with all the things we all went through, we were all able to be successful. So if it's something that you can start even earlier, imagine how much more successful we can be. Because if you take out the amount of time we spent trying to find ourselves, like what OJ spoke about, that the amount of time spent figuring yourself out, if you can get that sooner, you'll have a better chance to be successful.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think mine isn't too different from that. I literally wrote down two-way street on my hand before you started talking. And I would say also wisdom is a two-way street, right? I think the difference is we may not have the words as children to articulate it, but we're seeing things. And what I've learned is that we were actually you guys' cheat codes to understanding this new context, right? And what you did was, what my parents weren't aware is that they were not reading. It was an open book test, and they weren't using the books that were in front of them, because you have raised intelligent children. We all have incredible gifts, and the unfortunate reality is that because of whatever it may be, neglected the wisdom that lay in the eyes of your kids, right? So that's
a very good point.
So that's a
very good point. Thank you. Who's next?
I'd like to say.
Go ahead, Oma.
I was going to say to our parents, I don't want you to look at this as, we're just putting you guys all out on the line and just, lashing you or whatever. Like, we are.
We don't care.
No. What I want to go home that we are forever grateful for everything that we had. Growing up now, we understood what the struggle was. Then we didn't, because why? You guys kept everything pinned in and then exploded, which was very unhealthy. And our parents, you have to also understand, mental health is very, very real. You have to deal with your own. You have to clear your mentals in order to be able to help somebody else. Because you guys are dealing with so much, and your frustration can lead you to do something that you don't even know. So you really need to cleanse yourself on the inside, and it's really going to help a lot with how you interact with us. But like I said, we are eternally grateful, and we know that you're going to be much better grandparents than parents, and you're gonna be so nice, and we're gonna wonder where our parents went and who was this new person.
Okay, Soka, you going?
Yes, I just want to leave with 3 points, and some of the points that I think we should expand on part 2. But I also just want to piggyback off of what everybody said in terms of just saying thank you for having this platform, and thank you for all the parents that are on here listening, because it definitely is, like Owen said, a step in the right direction. But one thing that I want to emphasize is just communication, because even us, we're the older generation. The younger generation, the world that they're growing up in right now is very, very scary. Yeah. And if you do not talk to your kids, then they are getting advice from the wrong people. And we can't just depend on, and don't get me wrong, prayer is the key. We can all sing songs, we know that. But you do need to speak to your kids, especially if you are raising Black men in America. It is important. Those conversations need to be had, especially if you're raising Black women in America. Those need to be had, because like I said, if you do not talk to them, they are getting advice from people who you do not want them taking advice from. So open that line of communication up. And then I would also like to speak on behalf of all the single women. And I would like to, this is a topic that we need to talk about next, because it, a lot of times is you can't have, don't date, finish your books, finish reading. And all of a sudden you reach a certain age and it's like, when will you marry? And it's like, for my whole life, I wasn't allowed to date. And now all of a sudden I just finished school, I'm entering my career, and it's, where's your husband? And so I think that needs to be a topic of conversation for the next time. But we just need to be very careful with, you know, what we're saying and how we're saying it. Even with having children, that's another topic for next time. But yes, that's it. But thank you guys so much for this platform and all the cousins. This is nostalgic, just bringing back all the memories. Fareed, we used to fight as soon as we walked in the door. I miss that. That's all I have to say.
I don't miss that.
Go ahead, Fareed.
I'll
Okay.
speak quickly. Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what everybody said. Everybody said they articulated very well. You know, thank you, Ma, for having this platform. I've seen it with my eyes how you've evolved during these last years, how you've become more accepting, more open. I think you're doing a great job of just trying to open the doors and just trying to be different. I think my point, because everybody's already touched upon it, my point would be just be open to knowing that you could be wrong. So there's a point in time where you know your child or somebody else says something to you and you've dismissed it because you're like, how could they know? They're too young, you know. And you know, wisdom comes in any form and shapes and sizes. So having that open mind to say, hey, I could be wrong about this, let me find out a little bit more. I could be doing something a little bit wrong. And it's not to say that, you know, obviously we know everything that was done with was best intentions, but there are times where, you know, just because you're older doesn't mean you're correct. And so having that open mindset to say, hey, you know what, I could be doing this the wrong way. Let me take a second look at that. That would mean a lot to any child, any point, because that means you're taking our point seriously. That means you care about what we think, and it's important that, you know, we feel that we're heard. So I just say keep that in mind. That's my point.
Thank you.
Just to
Who's going next?
I'll go
My
next.
sorry, just to piggyback off of what Fareed said, it's okay to say you're sorry. Like that's it.
Yes.
It's okay to. I thought we know how to say that. Sorry now.
Yes.
Sorry, come and beat me.
Yes.
That's
Apologies.
It's okay to apologize. It's not gonna kill you. It's not gonna. It's good.
And do you want food? Is not an apology.
I was just about to say that. Thank you, Amma.
Okay. OJ, you wanted to say something.
It was Akiemi.
Yeah, I was
Okay, Akiemi.
I'll go after Akiemi.
You know, I'm happy we're having this conversation, and I think that, you know, being able to talk about topics like, you know, mental health keeps coming up, but more than that, the fact that we're having a conversation that's between the generations is not something that happens like this usually. And people often talk about stereotypes, you know, growing up in a Nigerian household or Nigerian parents, and it's usually from a comedic lens. And so the fact that like we're having an open, honest discussion, I feel like that could be very impactful for, you know, just the culture overall. And so I'm just really happy to be a part of this conversation right now.
OJ.
Okay, first I just want to clear something up. So when I said that it's too late, you have to take, I guess, what I'm saying in context. I'm saying that it's too late for our parents to fix what they needed to fix when we were children now that we're adults. Like,
yes.
I don't want you to tell me now, what are you supposed to tell me when I was 10? Like, that's what I'm saying, that it's too late for that. That's why when we're having our children, that when they're 10 years old, we're going to tell them what they need to know at 10 years old. We're not going to wait until they're married and having their second child. You understand? That's what I meant to say, that it's too late for that. Like, that's just not the emotional. It's too late. It's over. So, but I definitely do want to thank you for having this platform. And I do hope that, you know, it does change some dialogue, or it does create some dialogue. And I definitely want to give our parents credit now, because I guess as we're getting older, like, it's easier to talk to them about whatever it is that we need to talk to them about, you know. And I feel that, you know, that happened, you know, over time. And, you know, we're slowly healing, but it's a healing process nevertheless. And yeah, just waiting for part 2. Yeah.
Good. Who else?
Let me do
T-Tops and Camille. Okay.
Come up, go first.
All right. So I'd like to jump on a couple of things. One, I'd go with Omo. This isn't just us. I don't want it to just be everybody just putting out their gripes. It's more than that. We are incredibly grateful. I think one of the most important things for raising a child is to have a good community. Without that community, it is very difficult for any child to go. So cousins, aunts, uncles, all of them play a very important role in the development of a child. There have been times that uh, Akiemi's mom has been my saving grace when it came to dealing with my mom, and vice versa. Everybody having that community is very important. Another thing is, like Isake said, there's that kind of look at your book, get married step that they literally tell you. When I was in middle school up into the high school, don't date, don't marry, don't talk to a girl because you'll get her pregnant. You work at McDonald's for the rest of your life, and now everybody's like, when are you getting married? When are you getting married? When are you getting married? From the time I was like 20 to now. And like I said, I think the most important thing is to have a earnest conversation, because kids are not immune or oblivious to the struggles of their parents when they're growing up. There are a lot of the things that from age 10 or age 6 even, that we see, that we know that the struggles that our parents are going through, but we don't know how to address them, you know? So it's important. Your child is not oblivious to the struggles that you're going on. They might not go up to you and say, "Mommy, how do we fix this car trouble?" or whatever, but they know. So it's kind of important to kind of explain what's going on, but not to kind of put it in a situation that this is what we need to do to fix it. Just kind of say, "Hey, this is what's going on. We'll handle it. Don't worry about it," because they're not oblivious to the things that are going on.
Thank you. T-Tops.
Yeah, I'll touch on two things. The first, I think Owen's the one that mentioned it, and Morgan mentioned it, that, this isn't a complaint. This isn't us saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? This is us just kind of explaining from our side. And, everything that happened in our lives is how we got to where we are today. If things were slightly different, if things didn't go the way that happened, like, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation. So, everything happens for a reason. The fact that we're having this conversation today, we're very thankful that we can openly communicate, our perspective, our upbringing. And people say, if you want to make progress, the first step is admitting that something needs to change. So, Auntie, you having this conversation today, parents, you guys being on this call today, listening to us, it means that you guys want to do better. It means that we can do better, that we will do better. And I think that, the optimism and the idea that there is better, it's a good feeling to know that we can make a difference, and that I think we are going to make a difference. So just want to thank you guys for having this.
Yeah. And so that ends this. I just want to also tell you guys how so proud I am of you. And I'm not going to get emotional, but just having this conversation with you as equals and hearing you and how articulate and eloquent you guys are, and just being comfortable in yourself. It just bubbles, it wells up in me, and I'm so proud, and I'm so grateful that I'm a part of you. And I thank God for your lives, and I love you guys very, very much, and very, 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 very much. And I'm going to keep our WhatsApp group, because I already said I was keeping our WhatsApp group, because it's an opportunity for me to also communicate and keep in touch with you guys. And yes, we're going to keep asking the questions about when are you getting married until you get married. So just bear that in mind. When are you getting married? When are you getting married? So T-Tops, you have a couple of years before we start stressing you. So
Thank you,
start
Auntie.
dating. If you are not dating, start dating now.
Enjoy the years before. Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. So, but this is great. I really appreciate I appreciate your perspective, and I can't wait for part 2. It's okay, we'll probably champion part 2, and I will just sit back and let you guys, this is your show, and it's really great. I'm glad to be a part of this. I'll send the link, the YouTube link. You guys tell me how proud you are that I have a YouTube channel. I didn't hear the applause. Only Isoke applauded me that I have a YouTube channel.
Well done.
And I did it by myself.
Well done.
Thank you, Jare.
Very, very proud.
No, Camille did not help me. Nobody helped me. I mean, I stressed Imran a lot, but I did the YouTube channel by myself. So I'll send you guys the link to the YouTube channel and the recording, and then we'll take this up. So we have a few participants, and if there's anybody else that you guys know who want to be a part of this conversation, let's know. I'm so glad that you came on. I'm just really very happy. It's good to see you, and we'll do this again. I'll follow up with you guys on our WhatsApp group as to where we're doing part 2 of this. I love you, and God bless you. Who wants to close with a prayer?
You still can.
Peace.
Okay. I'll close with the prayer. And I was going to say, Auntie, I'll text you Owen's number so you can add him to the group as well.
So I can add him to the group. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Who wants to close?
I'll close, and then OJ can finish up. You know OJ is the pastor.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm not.
Okay. Who wants to close? It's okay. You're closing with the prayer. Okay.
In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
Lord, we just thank you for everybody being here. We thank you for this congregation. We know your word says that where 2 or 3 are gathered, there you are. Lord, we thank you for the ability for this program for us to just speak our minds. And we thank you for the open hearts of our parents to listen. Lord, we pray that this will not only help our parents, but the next generation after us. And Lord, we just give you all the honor, the glory, and the praise. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Parents, please do not call your children
Amen.
themselves.
All right, sweetheart. Have a blessed rest of the day. I'll send you guys the YouTube link, and then we'll send it to whoever you want to. All right, sweetheart.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.